Good morning and welcome to Alton Cemetery in Hampshire. Now this morning I'm here to visit the final resting place of a young lady who was murdered over 100 years ago. Now, it's very early in the morning and the sun isn't even fully up yet, so I hope it's not too dark on the video. But this is a story that I've known about for years and years and years, and I've always wanted to come here and visit this grave, and today I've finally done it. Now everyone will know the expression sweet FA. Now I know in modern day that has been turned into a kind of a swear word, sweet FA, but the origins of that are sweet Fanny Adams. And it's her grave we are here to visit today. Yeah, I've wanted to come here for a long time. I was going to come here on my last road trip, but it was really too far away from any of the others that I was doing, so in the end I thought I'll do that another time, and today is another time. Now I was freaked out a little bit because when I first got here it was really dark, and I had a little wander around to see if I could find it, and I had a little wander around this part of the cemetery behind me. Now there are quite a few old graves in here, but most of them are modern, like these ones here behind me. Most of them are like these, very modern, especially up the top end right behind me. So I had a little wander around and I noticed there's an overgrown section of the cemetery, so I had a little wander in there and I found it. But there is one particular grave that's got a big statue of Mary on it, and when I walked past, I honestly, it scared the life out of me because it's still really dark and I didn't notice it until I was right on top of it. But anyway, what I'll do is I'll spin you around, and as per usual, I'll show you around this lovely cemetery. We'll go straight into the old part, actually have a look around the old part, while I'll tell you a little bit about Fanny Adams. Fanny Adams was born on the 30th of April 1859, and her family lived in Tanhouse Lane on the northern side of Alton, a market town in Hampshire, England. She lived with both parents and had 5 siblings. Her grandparents lived in the house next door. Fanny was described as a tall, comely, intelligent girl. She appeared older than her real age of 8 and was known locally for her lively and cheerful disposition. Fanny's best friend Minnie Warner was the same age and lived next door in Tanhouse Lane. The afternoon of 24th of August 1867 was reported as fine, sunny and hot. Around this time, Fanny and her sister Lizzie and best friend Minnie Warner asked her mother, Harriet Adams, if she could go to the nearby flood meadow. Having no objections and being pleased for the girls to leave her while she was getting on with housework, Harriet agreed. Fanny and the local children had often played in the flood meadow owing to its proximity to Tanhouse Lane and the fact that there had been little crime in Alton within living memory. As the girls were walking towards the flood meadow and into a hop garden, they met Frederick Baker, a 29-year-old solicitor's clerk. He wore a frock coat, light-coloured trousers and a tall hat. Baker gave Minnie and Lizzie 3 halfpence to spend on sweets and Fanny another halfpenny. The girls had met Baker before, so were not alarmed by his presence. An hour later, the girls decided it was time to return home. Baker then approached Fanny and asked her to accompany him to Sholden, a nearby village. Fanny refused, and it was then that Baker abducted her and carried her into a nearby hop garden. Lizzie and Minnie ran back to Tanhouse Lane, straight to Martha Warner. She ignored their story, so the girls just decided to carry on playing together, totally oblivious to Fanny's fate. It was not until 5 p.m. that they went home for dinner. Mrs. Gardner, who also lived on Tanhouse Lane, noticed Fanny's absence and inquired as to her whereabouts. The girls relayed what had happened earlier in the day and told Mrs. Gardner that Baker had taken Fanny away. Mrs. Gardner then relayed the information to Fanny's mother, Harriet, and the two women searched for her. They met with Baker after going only a short distance near a gate separating the hop garden from the flood meadow. Mrs. Gardner asked Baker what he had done with the child. Baker assured her that he often gave money to children to buy sweets. Mrs. Gardner replied, "I have a great mind to give you in charge of the police," to which Baker told her she could do what she liked. Baker's position in the town as the solicitor's clerk initially deflected any suspicions the two women had. They both returned to their homes believing Fanny was still playing in one of the surrounding fields. Between 7 p.m. and 8 p.m, Fanny had still not returned home, prompting Harriet and a group of neighbours to search for her missing child. As the sun was setting, the group began searching the hollow with no success. In the nearby hop garden, however, labourer Thomas Gates found Fanny's head stuck on two hop poles while he was tending to the crops. Fanny's ear had been severed from the head, which had two large cuts from mouth to ear across the temple. Further investigation discovered the remains of what was left of the child. The head, arms and legs were separated from the trunk. There were 3 incisions on the left side of the chest and a deep cut on the left arm, dividing the muscles. Fanny's forearm was cut off at the elbow joint and her left leg nearly severed at the hip joint, with her left foot cut off at the ankle point. Her right leg was torn from the trunk and the whole contents of her pelvis and chest were completely removed. 5 further incisions had been made on the liver. Her heart had been cut out and her vagina was missing. Both of her eyes were cut out and found in a nearby river Wey. Overwhelmed with grief, Harriet collapsed on her way to inform her husband, who was playing cricket at the time, so word was sent instead. When George was told the details, he returned home, located his loaded shotgun and set off to find the culprit. Fortunately, neighbours stopped him and instead sat with him through the night. The next day, hundreds of people visited the hop garden to help collect Fanny's scattered remains. Most of Fanny's body parts were collected that day, but an arm, a foot and intestines were not located until the following morning. One foot was still in a shoe and still clutched in one hand with the 2 halfpence that Baker had given to Fanny. That evening, Police Superintendent William Cheney rushed to the solicitor's office, arriving at 9 p.m. He found Baker still at work an hour later than usual. Cheney had no alternative than to arrest Baker on suspicion of murder. By this time, a large and agitated crowd had gathered outside, forcing Cheney to smuggle Baker out the back door for fear that the mob would kill him. When searched at the police station, Baker was found to have 2 small knives. Spots of blood were observed on both wristbands of his shirt, and his trousers had been soaked to conceal the bloodstains. Baker was charged with murder and a trial date was set. The trial took place at Winchester on the 5th of December. Justice Mellor invited the jury to consider a verdict of not responsible because of insanity, but they returned a guilty verdict after just 15 minutes. On the 24th of December, Baker was hanged outside Winchester Prison. The crime had become notorious and a crowd of 5,000 attended the execution. This was the last public execution held at that prison. Following the execution, Baker's death mask was made, and the following year his full figure was placed as an exhibit in the Chamber of Horrors at Madame Tussauds' famous waxworks in London. In 1869, new rations of tinned mutton were introduced for English seamen. They were unimpressed by it and suggested it might be the butchered remains of Fanny Adams. Fanny Adams became slang for mediocre mutton, stew, scarce leftovers, and then anything worthless. The large tins the mutton was delivered in doubled as mess tins. To this day, those tins are still known as Fanny's. Fanny Adams was buried at Alton Cemetery in Hampshire, which is where we are today. Well, that's all the information I could find on Fanny Adams. But she, as you heard, she was just a young girl who wanted to go out and play with a friend and her sister in a town or a village that was really safe. And unfortunately, on that particular day, it wasn't. Now, I'm just going to come past that grave marker that's like a statue here. I'll turn around so it's behind me. Now, this is zoomed up out of the dark at me this morning. This one right here scared the life out of me. I mean, as you can see, if you look over here behind me, the sun is only just popping up now. But this is where the final resting place of Fanny Adams is located. Now actually it wasn't that difficult to find. This is, I think, the second path I walked along, and it is well trodden, the grass leading to a final resting place. In fact, I think I can see it right in front. Yes, I can see it right in front of me now. So what I'll do is I'll spin you around, and as per usual, we'll go and have a look at it together. Right, you'll see what I mean in a second by the well-trodden grass leading to it. Someone's even put a picture of her there, which is lovely. Yeah, look at the grass here on my left. See the way that's cut away? And right at the front there, it's the final resting place of Fanny Adams. Now the writing on it isn't very clear, but as you can see, teddy bear, someone's put a little picture of her there, and you can clearly see on there it says Fanny Adams, but other than that you can't really make out much of what it says, unfortunately. But that is the final resting place of Fanny Adams. Well, that was the final resting place of Fanny Adams. It's a lovely oldie worldy cemetery here. I love this part, and going in the other section where I started, all the grass is really short, all the graves are new, most of them. But this is a kind of cemetery. If I'm going to come to a cemetery now, everyone knows I prefer doing churches. If I'm going to come to a cemetery, cemeteries like this are what I like. But anyway, as I say, that was the final resting place of Fanny Adams. I do hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, can you please leave me a thumbs up? And if you like the content, then maybe consider subscribing. And if you do subscribe, don't forget to hit that notification bell. Anyway, that's me, Darren, from Alton Cemetery in Hampshire. I'll see you on the next one. Bye bye for now.